A fairly simple question for the first one. What was the first record that you bought?
First record I bought was Watching the Detectives by Elvis Costello.
My first record was... Drawing a blank. It's probably Costello as well. I think it was My Aim Is True by Elvis Costello.
Okay, what in particular, so this is open to both of you, what in particular about Elvis Costello was appealing to you?
Just lyrics, just the tunes, just a top lad.
Was there a specific song or a few songs that made an impression on you?
First album, probably.
Yeah, it's the same.
Okay. Well, Elvis Costello, that is something, and the music you make today is a lot of rhythm and blues, or a lot of blues influences. It's not particularly the music that people your age listen to.
Yeah.
So where did it come from?
We were really all friends from a young age, and all our parents were quite musical, but the whole rhythm and blues thing mainly came from Evan, our drummer. Came from his dad's record collection, and myself, Pete and Ev spent a lot of time hanging out together, and we spent most of the time in Evan's house, so we sort of just grew up listening to those records by the Stones, and we really started out with the 60s bands like the Beatles and the Stones and the Yardbirds and the Who, and then as we got a bit older we started getting into bands ourselves, so we got into Dr. Feelgood and then the original blues guys like Chuck Berry and Howlin' Wolf and blues artists like that. But I suppose it was when you sort of started hanging out with us then that we sort of put you onto the blues.
Well, you mentioned Evan's, was it his
Dad,
dad's
yeah.
record collection? Were there specific records that you remember from that period, or? I
just remember the Beatles were always on and the Stones were always on, so just that sort of, and Chuck Berry as well was on a lot, so we kind of just grew up around that, those records and Elvis Costello and people like that, so it's hard to tell which ones specifically, but just that whole sort of
era.
Yeah, those bands, yeah.
And well, you used Evan's bedroom or as a practice room. Do you still use it?
Yeah, use it for rehearsals.
Rehearsals. And so you still go there to jam out?
Yeah, whenever we get a chance, we're normally away, quite a lot.
Right.
We're quite busy, so we don't get much time to practice. But whenever we get home for maybe a week or two, then we sort of go in a couple of times just to sort of learn some new tracks.
Okay. Well, when you started the band, like I said, the music isn't the type of music that most of your peers would listen to.
Yeah.
Was it difficult then to start a band playing the music that you did?
No, not really, because we were all just sort of friends, and it was like a hobby. It was just something we did when myself, Evan and Pete hung out, instead of playing football together, we just played music, and that was, the band sort of was just this natural progression from us just being mates and, hanging out and playing music together, and then when Ross joined, it sort of got a bit more serious, and then we just started gigging, and it just sort of naturally progressed into a band, as opposed to just us saying, oh, we're going to start a band here.
So there was not really an ambition when you started out to...
No, it's just a bit of fun. It was just like something we did at the weekends, or when we went over to each other's houses, it was just playing music.
Okay. And Ross, you joined after the band was already formed.
Yeah.
Was it difficult stepping in? Because obviously you knew him, but did you know the rest as well?
I met the lads whenever I went to do practice for the first time, but it wasn't difficult really, because the band hadn't really started properly.
Do you remember that first meeting?
Yeah, pretty well actually.
Can you describe it?
It was in a shed, just practiced.
You just started practicing?
Yeah.
And how did it feel for the band? Because the lead singer, you were in search for a new lead singer?
Yeah, because before us, we didn't really have a singer. I was too shy to sing, and Pete was the only one that had any kind of neck to sing. And then when we did a one-off sort of local gig, and Ross supported us, and we didn't have a singer, and I knew Ross, so we just said, oh, do you want to hang out with us and jam? And then he came in and practiced, and then haven't been able to get rid of him since. But yeah, no, it you know, it was quite easy because we knew each other, so it wasn't just like strangers, you know. And then the lads sort of wouldn't have known him, but would have known about him and stuff. And you know, we just all gelled really well, quite quickly.
And then, well, I was gonna ask you about the first gig you did, which was, I think, at a Christmas performance at your school, but
Yeah.
I believe you weren't there yet, right?
Yeah, that was before Ross. That was just like a one-off thing as well. We had kind of 2 other friends that just joined in, and that was just the very beginning when we sort of were jamming. That was the first ever performance, you know, live performance we did as some form of the Strypes.
Well, so what did the arrival of Ross do to the band? What made it become more important at that point, or go in that direction?
We're just a singer now. You know, we didn't, you know, like beforehand. You know, obviously I was far too shy, and Pete was the only one that had the confidence to sing, but he wasn't very good. So, you know, it just meant that we had sort of a proper band, and then, you know, we'd gotten this Irish TV slot shortly after Ross joined, and that kind of spurred us on to keep gigging and take it more seriously. And it was just this natural thing that we just really enjoyed doing it, and we enjoyed, you know, being in Evan's bedroom just practicing all the time, and it became
It was an actual formation as well, instead of changing all the time.
And then, well, you mentioned the gigging. You did a lot of local gigs and touring around Ireland. What did you learn from this period of gigging? Did it teach you some lessons?
Yes, but it gave us a lot of experience with crowds, because, you know, we played a lot of places obviously that we'd never played before, into new crowds, and you know, we learned how to handle sort of crowds not being interested in you, or, you know, not wanting you there.
Well, can you give me an example of when that
I mean,
happened?
if we had done, you know, gigs we did a lot of sort of gigs in big sort of country halls where nobody'd show up, and, you know, you have to play for like 2 hours, and, you know, so you just get the experience of having an empty crowd and how to handle, you know, that side of it, and you know, just how, you know, different types of gigs just gave us different experiences. So when we started doing the Dublin clubs, and we did a couple of really great gigs where the, you know, room was packed out and the reaction was great, and then but we were able to sort of, you know, deal with gigs where nobody showed up, and, you know, I suppose all that sort of stuff just gives you, you know, more, you know, the experience really helps, and then it gives you more confidence then when you do have a crowd that's that's actually interested.
It helps you create a stage presence, so that you can actually create a show on stage, and gives you more confidence to do it.
And yeah, was this something you were needing at that point, or were you fairly confident at that point already?
Started off, so we didn't really know how to do it. We were just starting.
So it's basically honing your skills and for where you are now.